Hello, I'm Kyle from Give Pause Hobby. I'm here in the echoey room here and work just to film this quick intro that just in time for me to have a new Robo Rumble, bigger than ever. I'm planning on 6 different factions. There was a March 29th update to the BetterBot project files, including 3 factions. In order of magnitude, the Contraption Conspiracy, the Cogwheel Cult, and the Dummy Duchy. So I'll be going through each one of those changes that were made, and files are obviously already up on the BBP page, and the link is down below. Go Bumblebees. For those of you who follow Marbula 1, they're not doing as hot as they were earlier, but such is life. Don't know when I'm actually going to get to film that. Hopefully, maybe this weekend, maybe next week, we'll see. But for the time being, these changes are really nice. They range from small, verbiage changes to make the boards or the cards a little bit clearer, up to pretty sizable adaptations to what how the factions act, what they do, and everything. And then one little bug that got smushed. So, thanks for tuning in. As always, though I never really say it, like, subscribe, all that sort of stuff down below. And now I will get out of here, and my voice will remain, my face will get out of here, and I'll show you the changes to the boards and the cards. Here we go. Okay, starting off with the smallest changes, the Contraption Conspiracy. The berries at the top remain unchanged. Birdsong is the same. Daylight is the one that has the first small little change. In Move, you'll notice that there is a new section that says Clearing Tie. Move to the clearing with the most Corvid warriors. So that just didn't exist before. There was some note about if there is no clearing, but there wasn't anything about ties aside from the assumed high priority. So that's a new thing. The rest of Daylight is the same as it was last time it was updated, and Evening is the same as well. Over on the plot tokens, we have another small change under the bomb, the parentheses italicized text. It still says the replacement token doesn't trigger for the one you put on the board, because remember, when bomb goes off, they get another token that face up that then just helps them score points. But it does just kind of clarify that it can be another bomb because it's chosen randomly. And I think many people, if they grabbed a bomb for the replacement for the bomb, might naturally go, oh, do it again. But it can actually be a bomb. So that's a little bit of a shadow nerf. Bomb is kind of a helpful not necessarily, because some of the other ones are really powerful too, but the fact that a bomb could just go out there and then you don't get to actually use the bomb is a little bit of a bummer for him, but it's overall just a little bit of clarity. That's it. I think I'm finally going to reprint this one because my board has enough things written on it and a couple of post-it notes that it's time to just get a fresh one and start new. Okay, the change for the Cogwheel Cult. So there's one tiny change on the board and then some pretty notable changes in the trait cards. So the berries are all the same. Birdsong is the same. The only change, I guess let's go through other things that aren't changed. Evening is the same. Conspiracy Track's the same. The gardens, the conspiracies, everything else is the same. The one thing that's different is that in Daylight, when you are performing your rituals for the non-bird suits, it says place a warrior into clearing matching the revealed card, instead of place a warrior into ordered clearing. I think most people, I know I was playing playing this effect this intended way, but it wasn't clarified as such. I guess I was taking those reveal things as kind of parallel to, quote, orders, but I understand why the change is, they saw it to be important because it's good to be consistent. So that's the only change. So as you can see, I'm just adjusting the text on my board because that's the only thing that needs to be different. So I'm not going to print out a brand new one. That said, I am going to print out new trait cards because these are all pretty massive changes. So let's go from left to right on the board. So Spiteful used to say whenever you crusade, deal an extra hit. Now it says whenever you crusade, score 1 victory point if you removed at least 1 token in any clearing. So this one is, it's Spiteful previously was just, a global buff to crusading, like your combat prowess. Now it's a little bit more of an edge case. It's kind of interesting. Because I didn't personally think that it was so strong that it needed to be kind of narrowed scope like that, but that's what we have. Erratic used to be at the end of your turn, add the top card of the deck to the Lost Souls. Now it is at the beginning of your turn, add the top card of the deck to your Lost Souls. This one makes a ton of sense to me, as opposed to, it wasn't really so much erratic as it was just kind of bulking up your Lost Souls pile. Now there is no, the whole idea of the Lost Souls pile. If you're a human player against the bots or against human lizards, is that you can control that to some extent. It makes a lot more sense thematically based on the fact that it's named erratic. That you would just add a card before, you would add a card without giving anyone the opportunity to react to that. That one, I love that change. I think it's really cool. The next one just completely went away. Preachers used to be the third card, which is whenever you convert, do it twice. Preachers is now Fanatics. Whenever you convert, also battle in that clearing, dealing an extra hit. And then there's a little thing for a player tie. So I really like this. Preachers, I did think was just kind of meh. Converting once into per card, per pilgrim. It makes for interesting board states where there's like 1 or maybe 2 lizards that suddenly popped out of the woodwork and took over a couple of warriors in a clearing. But doing it twice per convert just did seem a little bit intense. And this I really like, the idea that it not only makes, I think, for something that's going to be more interesting gameplay-wise, but I like the theme too, Fanatics, that you're not only converting them, that they're immediately going to take the fight to the other teams. So very cool. Lastly, Martyrs. So this is a bit of a clarification and a shadow nerf. When it used to be, whenever you move a warrior to the Acolytes box, move another warrior from your supply. Now it specifies whenever you perform a ritual for a bird card in daylight, move an additional warrior from the supply to your Acolytes box. So before, that would technically, I don't think I actually was, but that, or maybe I don't know if I actually ever played with Martyrs. That would proc off of Robot Revenge. If someone else kills one of your guys, that is technically, getting added to your Acolytes box. So that would, happen then. No longer. Now it is just if you're using a bird card. All right, Dummy Duchy. So there are a number of changes in this one, and I would say they're not necessarily all nerfs or buffs. It's kind of a nice combination and a really interesting and I think cool balancing act that they put into the actual player board. So this is definitely going to be one I'm going to print off a new copy of, because my old one, there's just enough changes that I don't really want to have to write them in. So at the top, just a heads up, I can't remember if I actually when this happened, but price of failure is now cost of errors, and I vaguely remember talking about that last time, which makes sense because it is not the same as the player faction price of failure. And Root being as literal of a game as it is, I think it makes sense to, if something is inspired by what the player faction does, as opposed to something that is literally the same, like Pilgrims in Cogwheel Cult, where you rule any clearings where you have gardens. That is the same as the player, so it's the same name. But Robot Revenge is not the same as, I can't remember what the player power is called. But anyways, price of failure is cost of errors, because you're just removing the lowest, price of failure, I guess, gives the player the ability to choose which, it's their most expensive minister, but then they can choose which one goes away. This one, they're not expensive. They're in order from top to bottom. So the same idea works different enough that makes sense that it should be a different name. Okay, besides that, the berries are the same. Birdsong, buildings, and the difficulty level, that sort of stuff, that is all the same. The rest of it all is something changing. So daylight, evening, and minister track, and all of their trait cards. So kind of a big change. So you can see, if you compare the two boards, Ministers has been bumped from the end of daylight to the beginning of evening. It is all the same action as it was before, except obviously it's in a different part of the turn. I believe, without looking it up, that that's where it is in the player faction for the Duchy as well. Either way, I think it just clears out. It balances a little bit, because a pretty big block of text was added for this new action at the end of daylight, to make daylight maybe not as long seeming. Aside from that, it does have a little reminder text. It says Captain and Formal are always active and have no action. It's kind of a nice just quality of life improvement there, reminding you that those aren't actual actions that take place over there. They're just always in place as long as you have them. So before we get to the changes over on the side, let's go back and look at this new action, Rally in Daylight. So this is not a change. There was no rally. This is a brand new thing. It says, in each such clearing without a citadel or market and less than 3 Duchy warriors, move your warriors toward the closest clearing with a citadel or market. So, first of all, already I really like this because it's giving the Dummy Duchy more mobility. They are they have mobility, but in their dig action, there's kind of like a ebb and flow of the tide rather than them moving around the map. So this is giving them a little bit of lateral motion on the map, which I think will be cool. It also makes sense. They don't want their buildings to get busted up. So instead of having moles just sort of hanging out in clearings that they might be able to do something with in the future, they're going to try their best to go towards a clearing with a building so they can help defend it. I think that's great. But then there's another interesting part to it, because there is a cap of 6 Duchy warriors that they can have in a clearing. So this is, I'm interested to see how close I get to this when this is in action. But after you have moved your warriors in this way, then in each clearing you rule with more than 6 Duchy warriors, place all but 6 of your warriors from the clearing into the burrow. So not only are they going to defend their buildings, they're also capped at only having 6 in a space. So if they're only able to make a certain number of buildings, or the other buildings were destroyed and they're kind of turtling up on their few spots that do have them. The rest of them are going to go back into the burrow, which is going to make it easier for them to dig the next turn. So I really like this. Just seems like it's going to be a more reactive, more living mole force on the table. Whereas before it's like, well, you either do or you don't have the engine up and running to actually make digs work. And this is kind of a cool interplay between their presence on the board and getting more dig actions into the game. So I really like this change. Over on the Minister track, there are some changes as well. So the captain, instead of battle and such clearing with the most enemy buildings, he now changes because I guess, there's going to be more dig actions happening potentially because of this rally interplay with the warriors. So deal an extra hit in clearings with a tunnel. So kind of a cool thematic tie, like this, mole with a headlamp coming out of the tunnel. He is just great at like surprises and is going to deal an extra hit because of that, but only in spaces with a tunnel. The other one was kind of cool in terms of, it could be pretty painful to the other factions and a nice boon to the moles to just like wreck some buildings. But I think this one is kind of a neat thematic tie that I'm looking forward to seeing. So the only other change is right underneath it, Marshal. It used to be move half your warriors rounded up from the clearing, not the burrow, with the most of your warriors to an adjacent clearing not ruled by you. So this was previously the only way that moles would move. And if you just never got Marshal, then moles, the only thing they would do, they would pop up in clearings when they dug, they would get killed, and then they would be created and pop up again when digging. Marshal allowed a little bit of motion, but again, I think the motion for rally is a lot more sensible. It's going to make it feel like more of an opponent who's responding to the board state as opposed to one just making one, charge into battle, which is interesting because, battle would have already happened. It'd be one thing if Marshal was above captain on the Minister track, because then potentially you could have moved in and battled, but that's not how it was. So how it works now is place a warrior from your supply into such a clearing that has at least one of your buildings and the least of your warriors. So this is like essentially just warping in a mole for a smaller but more powerful version of rally. He's just looking to the board and saying, all right, what building is the most or is the least secure? Boop, and a mole gets pooped right onto the board right there. So those are the changes to the board. I really am excited about what they have in stock. All right, moving on to the trait cards. Again, these are kind of a mixed bag, as you'll see, of some buffs, some nerfs, and some clarifications, I guess. The last of which, foundations. I've read this a number of times, and I can't figure out if it changes anything. I believe this is just a verbal clarification. It used to say crowns are only removed via price failure if one of the removed buildings was in a matched clearing or matching clearing. Now it says cost of errors now only removes the crown furthest towards the bottom of the Minister track, matching the clearing in which the buildings were moved. So yeah, I mean they're the exact same thing. I guess it's a little bit because then there was the parenthetical text on the old one. So this one just kind of clarifies a little bit, and aside from that, it's the same trait. So it's instead of just removing your coolest minister, it's more suit sensitive, and there have been times when some of the suits, one or two of them, made it pretty much all the way down. The other one maybe didn't even have any crowns. So that would mean like 1/3 of the time you are just protected from the cost of errors, which is pretty rad. Also, it does reference price of failure in the old one, and now that's changed the cost of errors. Okay, up next, workforce has been changed entirely. It is gone. It used to say if there are not enough warriors in the supply to recruit during birdsong, immediately perform the build action. I have played with this at least once, and I never had it happen. I'm not saying that it can't, but maybe worth going into something else. And here we have something else. So if a dig action is skipped because there's not enough warriors in the burrow, recruit a warrior in the burrow. Boom. I would imagine this is late game, probably not going to see play too often. But early game, it definitely could. When you're only making one mole in the beginning, this could definitely help crank that up a little bit. So that's pretty cool. Investors is a slight buff for the moles. It used to say when price of failure, cost of errors, is triggered by a human player, lose a victory point. That player has to discard a card matching the clearing in which the building was removed. If they can't, immediately sway a minister matching the clearing. It is all still the same. Obviously, cost of errors is now in there. However, when it is triggered, the player has to discard a card matching the clearing, blah, blah, blah. That part happens, and only then, if they did discard a matching card, lose one victory point. So before, it was a guaranteed victory point loss. Now, and then if they can't discard, you immediately get a minister. Now, not only do you get a minister if they can't discard, but if they can't, you don't have to lose a victory point. So, boom, there we go. Okay, and then lastly, Overwhelm is another timeline shift. Of the effects are all the same, but the order is different. So it used to say, if no building can be placed during the build action in daylight, immediately recruit 2 warriors in the burrow and then battle in all clearings. Now you immediately battle in all clearings and then recruit 2 warriors in the burrow. I guess I would say this is a bit of a shadow buff to the Duchy, because it's possible there could be a situation in which you have too many warriors on the board, that if you were to first recruit to the burrow and then battle, you might not have any warriors to put in the burrow. And then there's a good chance, if that's the case, you're going to be in enough battles that you're probably going to lose 1 or 2. So then you would just lose out on that other part of the trade. Now it's making sure that, but still doing the same thing. You're not changing that battle part of it. You're just also gaining the higher potential of having warriors to put into the burrow. So I think that makes total sense to me. Personally, anytime these trait cards, I'm not saying they all need to be buffed into like the stratosphere, but anytime there's a way to get the same effect but order it in such a way that it's more often than not going to be beneficial to the robot faction, I think that just makes a ton of sense. Because as someone who has piloted these factions many, many times, not only is there the struggle of actually remembering to do these traits, which if you've been following the channel, is not a guaranteed thing that I do. But it's just a bummer to, after all that work, and you remember to, oh yeah, they have the thing because it's Overwhelm, then you actually don't get to do the action, or you don't get to do as cool of an action. So I think that makes a ton of sense. And I actually thought this worked differently when I first read through it, which is why I thought there was a combination of buffs and nerfs, because I thought it was I've actually never played with Overwhelm, and I thought it was recruit warriors to the board. So in the old one, it would have been recruit and then battle with just 2 extra warriors. And now I thought it said battle and then recruit, which, helps stabilize after the battle, but isn't quite as much of a surprise punch. This one, it's a little bit of a buff for the moles, but it's not enormous, and I think it just makes sense. So those are all the changes for the 3 factions that were in the March 29th update. So there you have it. A little bit longer of a video than I was expecting. I threw in if I was specifically or plainly just reading the changes, wouldn't take as long, but hopefully a little bit of commentary along with them is appreciated. And if not, you know how to scrub the progress bar on a video, and you can just go to the next thing. So like I said, we got my first ever greater than 4 faction Robo Rumble coming up, and I'm just going straight to the top with 6. So I'm very excited for that, and it'll be up when it gets up, and look forward to seeing some of these changes in some of the factions that will be participating in that event. So thanks for tuning in, and see you guys next time. Bye.